Diablo 4 Paragon board looks complicated, and yes, I'm actually using 7 different glyphs here. No worries, let's get ready for Season 3 and improve your Paragon journey with 4 simple steps. Step 1 is identifying what board are we in. Is it an intelligence board, dexterity, or rather willpower? First, let's get the plus 20 damage node and also the maximum lives. The maximum lives are always multiplicative, getting you way more life nicely. That's why I'm always trying to take all the 2% life nodes. It makes quite the difference. Don't forget though, life is useless if you don't have enough armor to back it up. And that's also why we're going to do the Amplify glyph. Amplify works here pretty well because this is an intelligence board. How do you easily find this out? By going on mobalytics.gg, Diablo 4 Planner, and it shows you all the stat glyphs that work. For example, with Dominate, that's Overpower. And we only have 7 glyphs. If I now go for Control, which is Int, there's 3, 6, 9, 12. Especially the rare nodes are Int as well. And that's the general rule of thumb. If you are planning to take rare nodes, the yellow ones, then you also want the glyph that works with them. I put on Amplify. Amplify gives us 150% bonus to all magic nodes, which is fantastic. But it also gives us 10% multiplicative damage. And here's something very important to learn. It's good to take things that always work. This is, if I curse an enemy, 10% more multiplier, which always works, also versus bosses. Whereas the control glyph, for example, gives you 10 or 20% against slowed, stunned enemies. Well, you can stun a boss, but not all the time. No matter how fast you do it, in the time where he's not stunned, you're missing completely out on the 20% multiplier, for example. Whereas in my case, I can get the Amplify to work always because I can curse bosses. In order to get this activated now, we take Int and we take Int. We're missing one more, which is now the one down here. And since this is boosting the rare nodes, we might as well take left and right. It adds another 7.5% and on here another 75 armor, which is quite significant, especially since we're trying to reach 10k, 13.5k for these tier 100 dungeons. Now I'm going over the right side for the dex and the willpower. I don't want the strength. You could say, wow, that one node is not going to make a big difference. It will. It will. There's one important thing, step 2, knowing which board to take next. Since you want to check how many rare nodes are you planning to take, because the stat requirement of every rare node gets higher the further boards you add. This is now 260 dex, but the next board is already going to have 300 plus dex requirements. If there's a lot of intelligence nodes you're trying to take, you could put this later because we're going to try to max out on intelligence. But that's not the only important thing to look at. It's also how to get into the board and how to get out of the board. That needs to be simple. We're going to here now do the Flesh Eater because it has 2 very powerful nodes with the Erudite and the Targeted for damage to elites and bonus elemental resistance, which both are dex and willpower. So I'd rather have them clocked off early than struggle later to get enough dex and willpower. And we're going to turn it this way as we're trying to get to the Flesh Eater and the glyph. But not only that, we're actually going to take resistances in the Paragon board. And that should not be underestimated because I can take 5, 10, 15, and another 20% poison resistance. Therefore, no poison resistance gem needed. I can focus on fire, ice, and lightning because shadow will mark off otherwise as well. Plus another 100 armor with the 100 armor the node offers. That's another 200 plus, 400 plus, 125, 125, 125. So much armor already gained. Now we do want to get to the glyph and we do want to get to the Flesh Eater. And here's again the decision. Will we need more willpower? Will we need more dex? This is one of these variable nodes that we can change later on if we're going back into the boards after we have everything done and we need to weasel out a little bit more stats. We'll come to that at the end, don't worry. Fine-tuning will be included. Now we move all our way to the Flesh Eater. Could technically take this node for the bonus critical strike damage, but we're playing shadow damage over time. That can't crit. So going for the critical strike damage unnecessary, despite actually taking dex, which gives us more critical strike chance. But we're more or less just taking the dex. We can also use something like the targeted node. And since we want the damage to elites, a little bit more dex, damage to elites, damage to elites. And then this node almost activated, boop, now activated, and we've already reached the glyph. Before we do anything in here, let's check what board this is. And in this case, we'll be talking about, yep, an intelligence board again. I mean, you can check for domination, which has quite some willpower, to be honest. But as we said, number one rule, if you take the rare nodes, feed it into this one, and we're taking erudite, plus we're going to be taking the resistance to all elements. Therefore, 20 int is already taken. And if I'm leaving the board on the downside, for example, I'm pretty much taking 3 more int. I have no choice. I need to get out here. So I get these 3 int points for free. In this case, I'm going to add a Scorch glyph, which gives me shadow damage over time. And as I said, shadow damage over time is not just simply an additive bonus. Right now I have 40 points in, and that gives us 52.8%. This shadow damage over time that also gives us a damage multiplier now ends up in our Shadow Blight key passive. So we do more shadow damage over time. Our key passive multiplier is higher. That means that putting more points into shadow damage over time is not just simply adding an additive bonus. We're now at 85. We're actually multiplying our damage further forward. So much worth it, especially since that additive damage is also being multiplied generally by our shadow damage multipliers, which then allows us to do, well, surprisingly, even more shadow damage. So sometimes merely additive things that seem to be not scaling so well often turn out to be huge multipliers. Moving now out of the board, we focus on intelligence again, which brings us into the wither board. And now we want to take quite some notes into the wither board, so this needs to be your third one. If it's the fourth one, and I'm going to activate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rare nodes. I mean, as the fourth one, we might not get these 5 activated anymore, since after this board, everything we get is trying to activate more glyphs for more multipliers. The best way into this board is also straight away on the right side for int, dex, dex, dex. Then we get damage reduction and shadow resistance, and now we get poison and shadow resistance already tapped. We sadly have to take this strength node. Would prefer to go over this side, but it costs me more points, and every single point is so important. We'll show you because we'll barely reach the goal we're aiming for. Get some more shadow resistance and more damage reduction, and then here again, variable node. Could take the willpower, could take the int. We will probably have enough int, so I'd rather go for the willpower here right now. Since for the wither node, we need the maximum amount of int. It gives us bonus damage in accordance to how much int we have. We're currently at 554, and every 60 int counts. And that's what we have to look at. So 600 is already very good. That's 10 times the bonus. Then the next step would be 720. And afterwards, that is 780. So if we get up to 780 int, everything above that is not worth it unless we would reach 840. Now we're getting more shadow damage that then multiplies, more shadow damage over time, which also is activated because we have enough intelligence. You notice here, 490 requirement already. This one has a 350 dex, so we'll kind of have to work on this. And that's 360 willpower and 350 dex as well. Therefore, we'll need to take quite some more of that dex and willpower. Now, in order to get into this, the best way is just go over here because we already have to take these intelligence nodes. We're forced to. We can't not take them because this board, surprisingly or unsurprisingly, is another intelligence board. It does have quite some nodes in terms of willpower, especially as you're going in, but we're planning to take the malediction, which is then already plus 10 int, and there down here is another 10 int from the shadow resistance. So it feels kind of a waste to make this be a willpower one. Go over the glyph, slot the darkness in for more shadow damage, which highs our shadow damage over time, which works multiplicative with our shadow damage in general. More shadow damage, the node, missing some willpower. Now, in order to get out of this board, we can just go downwards. We also want to go for more damage to shadow damage over time affected enemies and more damage to elites as well. Very good. And later we can leave this board, frankly, super easy. In order to get now to the next one, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to miss out on this 5% shadow damage. That is okay. Also, instead of taking 2 more in to activate this glyph, we might as well take the bonus shadow resistance to truly make sure that we don't have to even remotely pay attention to that. And then we're just cruising out of the board. Which brings us to the final Paragon note we want to have, Send of Death. That's 15% damage reduction or multiplicative if we have used up all the corpses. Now, in order to get into this board, we kind of don't want any rare notes. There's not a single rare note we want. This is crit, this is crit, this is damage to injured. Maybe the armor and intelligence would be good. How do we get into this board the best now? From this side? Or rather from this side? Let's look at the glyph and what it is. And in this case, Send of Death can be willpower, or it could be dexterity. If we're going for the dexterity route, it makes sense to come from the right side, because we could easily just go in here to activate this, right? Minimal effort. Just few points, boop, go in here, activate all of these, and then boom, go out. Makes actually really sense. So we attach 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we go over 11, 12, 13. Now we could go 14, 15 for the int, or we could go 14, 15 for the armor. That's a question if we actually reach the 780 int in the long run. Let's go over the willpower first. Activate this. Put in the exploit glyph, because that is vulnerable damage multiplier, which works with every damage we do. We do vulnerable damage, so that's easily achieved. And now to get the last point of dex that we need. And in this case, we can actually scruff one of these points, because we got to go over here anyways. Yep, to activate that. And then we're just moving out. Minimal points invested. That's really just a tiny point investment to actually get it done, ignoring the complete other side. With 55 points left and 1, 2, 3, 4 glyphs activated, we can do at least another 2, which brings us now to step 3, identifying if it's worth it to even get more multipliers. Do I have more multipliers? Because not every class has them. In my case, I want definitely to have Imbiber, because I told you damage while healthy is its own cool multiplier. That means we're gonna move over the points into the next board. And here we get Cult Leader, Hulking, Bone Graft, Blood Begets, and Bloodbath. We need at least 25 willpower. More would be optimal to make this worth it. For 25 willpower, we could check the Bloodbath board. That's down here. So we turn this 2 times, put on a Domination glyph just to check. I mean, here is Healing Received bonus. If we go from this side, it would be really convoluted, because even if you're going from this side, like 1, 2, 3 points, you take the willpower, go up, willpower, that's 3. And this would be only 4 willpower nodes. And then I have to already invest more points to get there, or even to get back here for the bonus healing received. Seems a bit weird. Don't like it. Let's check the next board. Maybe the Blood Begets board is better. And here the issue is the way of travel until I'm in, but maybe that's good, because the travel in can sometimes work very well. As I'm going up here, see there's 1, 2, 3 already close by. This would be Blood Orb healing kind of useless. There's 1, 2, 3 really close. So if we're coming from this side, I could take these 3, 4, the 5th, and maybe a 6th already. Or if we're coming from below, from the right side, we can take 1, 2, 3, 4, and then just go up to take the last ones. That might be a little bit simpler to go down. Let's try this one first and then see what we develop into. Before we try that one, I suggest a different board, and that is first the Bone Graft. The Bone Graft has one reason why it is so good, because if you're going to be taking this node, getting in here and out here is super simple. Now the question rather is, what is the Bone Graft actually? And in this case, it could be a dex, because you can just cruise through and take all of them. It could also be intelligence, which quite works well on that. But how about willpower itself? Yeah, willpower is not an option, not even close. I mean, you might have the 14 and then 19 and 25 as you're going in there. It's not impossible to think about, because it's quite the easy way in. But as we're trying to get in and out, either intelligence as we're going in and out, or the dexterity, because the dexterity is really perfect for going in and out, because you go in and you go out, and you take 4 glyphs by going in and out. Do we have another dexterity glyph though that could work? Now there's essence, but that's critical strike damage multiplier, so useless. There would also be exhumation, which hires our corpse skills in total. And we're actually planning to kind of use our corpse skills a lot. So if we now assume that we want to take exhumation because we said this could be an int board, then we move up all 3 here. And we're going to be trying to get past most of the int nodes. So there is already 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Kind of like forced to take them, can't even not take them. Putting the exhumation in, that's already 25 int taken. Now we can also take resistance elements, and resistance elements, plus the 10 intelligence. Now that would be, though, 3 points just to get 10 intelligence. On the other hand, there's only another 2 I can take easily here to get more intelligence. So I need 1 more. If I put that 10 away, I need another 5 in, so it would be another point investment. Therefore, this might be the best route to take. We're lacking some willpower to activate the rest of this glyph. That's quite sad, and we might squeeze out some willpower later. Again, the goal was 780 int. We're now getting more willpower, more int, and we get 23 points left. We said Blood Begets board might be good, right? As we're going in. So we take the Blood Begets, more willpower, more int. We're getting close, so I'm going to take more willpower, int, dex, strength, then the 2 willpowers, correct? We're going to go over to another int. Here would be 1 more willpower to take, so instead of going up, we're going left to get this one. Then we're putting the Imbiber in for the damage while healthy, which then allows us to also take willpower, int, willpower, willpower, willpower. Now there's another willpower here already, so that's 35 points easily taken. And if I want to, there's another point to take here. But I also have 5 more points to spend. So we're at 789 int. And our dex is at 427, but we would need 430. So we can actually weasel one out there. And willpower might also be a bit higher, but reaching 530 ain't gonna happen. Which brings us now to the final step, perfection. Really trying to weasel out those last points, making maybe a pathing better where I could get a dex point instead of a willpower point. See, here's a willpower point, but I could take the dex point instead. Still at 5 points, but with the dex point, I have this one activated, while I'm anyways not going to be reaching that one. With the last 5 points, we can also flash out more shadow damage over time, as that works as a multiplier. I mean, for my liking right now, for my maximum damage, I'll probably take willpower, int, and then finally we could get just even more shadow resistance. You could get another intelligence here for more shadow damage. We could squeeze out another point of armor if you really want to. And that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 glyphs taken with more or less perfect pathing, making the most out of our multipliers and additive damage bonuses. How many glyphs did you use before this video, and are you going to swap over to 6 as well? Plus, here's a new level method that almost made me beat the world record to 35 easy.